for us and make sure that we had um, a powerful and provocative message this morning. Um, her bio was in the email, but I want to tell you this. You know how our space is always like divinely aligned? Here's something crazy. Early in my seminary career, we were charged with kind of developing and understanding our own personal theology, and that required some research and reaching out to individuals. And so I just kind of hopped on Facebook, just wanting to connect with people who I knew or believed resonated with like the feelings that maybe I hadn't put words to. And Pastor Elise popped up. Maybe someone had shared something. I'm not certain. I read and started poking around her page at the time. And then what was supposed to be like an hour conversation, because I requested like, hey, will you talk to me? This is what I'm doing. She gratefully said yes. And then what was supposed to be like an hour conversation turned into like 2 hours, and I gained a lot of insight and clarity. But then come to find out, we already had multiple mutual friends, and she was in spaces that I knew and popped up in spaces that I was unaware of. And I'm like, wow, this is super crazy. She hopped into Gin and Jesus a couple of times, which was amazing. She herself has done and will relaunch a Bible study that is very much like the spaces that we curate for us. So she is now the Reverend Dr. Elise Salisbury, pastor and founder of Remnant Community Outreach, formerly Agape Church, writer, mother, activist who takes pride in advocating for the marginalized. And the rest of it, really, you can read. All I'm going to say is all around dope person with amazing prophetic and theological insights. So she is going to present us with a message, how God don't play about you. So I'm super interested. And as we approach that, good morning, Misha. Our driving question is, what are some emotional impacts of broken promises in your personal relationships? And how have you dealt with that? I'll preface that by telling you that my father used to tell me when I was young, never to make promises if you don't know that you can fulfill them. So I've always treaded lightly around things that I would say, no, I promise. Or like, I'm definitely, like, I promise I'm going to give you this. So what are the emotional impacts of broken promises in your personal relationships? And how have you dealt with them? Floor is open. Yeah, I got Red Bull and I got ice today. So y'all can take as long as you want to.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can, Jay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jay. I was kind of thinking about that question, and that was a really good one because I could remember as early as a child, promises being made and the impact of when somebody didn't keep their word to me was life shattering. And sometimes it's not a big thing, but in my um experience, um my father was a police officer and there was a promise to protect us. And there have been several instances when either he was not able, he didn't show up, whatever the cause, that was a broken promise to protect me from outside predators. And as a result, my heart was broken. So I'm grateful for your question. And I'm interested to see what comes about during the term of this sermon and conversation. Because yes, I believe all of us have on some level experienced that.
Jay, I'm so happy that you brought up I wrote down promise of protection. I think, I believe, just by nature of positioning, our parents almost come with this embedded sense of promise, this promise of protection, but definitely if it's reinforced. And I'm so happy that you gave the framing of when someone is unable, because sometimes it's not intentional. But either way, if they don't show up, and then this word heartbreaking, heartbroken is so true. It's glass shattering. It is when you crumble a sheet of paper and try to smooth it out, it disrupts what was and creates a totally different reality, a different perspective that we must then look at the world from. So the promise of protection, and I imagine that many of us have felt, well, whether it was parental or other relationships, that has been shaken in our lives. Thank you for that. Good morning, Brittini. Our question this morning: what are some emotional impacts of broken promises in your personal relationships, and how have you dealt with them? Sally A, I see your hand.
Good morning. Interesting question. So, um, in the past, if I felt someone had broke a promise to me, I would write them off fast, just real fast. Um, so recently, as of Friday night, I got a text from my brother who texted me a week earlier to say he and his family were going to be in town and asking if I was available for visits and da 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 da. I said, absolutely. I'm back in town. Just let me know. I get a text Friday night saying, hey, can you meet for breakfast and brunch tomorrow morning? And unfortunately, Lena had a gig. She had a catering event and needed help. And I'm always, let's go. Um, so I asked him, I texted him back, say, hey, no, I can't make um, tomorrow morning or yesterday morning. When are you leaving? Oh, Saturday afternoon. Like, dude, you've been in town for 3 days and I'm just now, and now you're not. And so, and unfortunately for me, the event that she was catering was a family reunion. So I'm walking into 80 people who want to see each other. And for whatever reason, I don't get to see my brother, who's in town with his wife and three of his four kids, who I saw one earlier in June because she came to graduation in San Francisco. So I had to feel my feelings, and then my child was like, "Mom, be nice, be nice." Um, and so yeah, I'm sitting here with those feelings right now of like sadness because I miss them when I don't get to see them. And they're probably one of the most loving branch of my family. Because when they sit on the sofa, they sit on top of each other. And it's like a spider's nest, and they're weaved together, and they move through life together. And um I like to see that. I like to feel that. I like to be a part of that, you know? And I didn't get to do that this time. And it's I don't I wish them well on their way home. But it still hurts. It still hurts. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sally. I do hope that you get to see your family soon. Um, you raised two really important points. One, when like circumstances and situations around you, when it reinforces that feeling of lack or loss or the gap space. Um, like if you're going through a breakup and you turn on the radio and like Tony, it's your anniversary comes on. Like, don't do that to me. Like nobody asked you for that.
Right.
And then you're bringing up this concept of like unintentional harm. And I think that goes very good with Jay's concept of when someone is unable. to fulfill the promises that they made. Sometimes when we move around, things move and happen so quickly that we overlook, or we don't think sometimes even that we are as important to someone or a situation that we actually are. When someone is looking forward to engaging with us and we're like, this and this happened and I didn't get a chance, not knowing that that's going to harm or hurt because we were excited and looking forward to and wanting and seeking that interaction. And it's unintentional, but it doesn't change the feelings that come, and it doesn't change the perspective of now harm or potential harm with engaging or getting excited with someone or this particular person in the future. And then the third thing, sometimes in an effort to protect ourselves from harm and hurt, we do things like cut people off. Like, oh, okay, I don't need you to do this twice, one and done. But when we protect ourselves so rigidly from pain, we also keep out the goodness. And Rebecca has, shared with us that prayer all the time, where we can offer ourselves and others forgiveness for doing what was birthed out of survival, that then becomes maladaptive when we get a little bit more grounded, to be able to say, hey, this hurt, and I'd really like to engage with you differently in the future. Thank you for that, Sally. Courtney, sitting outside, welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? I am outside. The park is my front yard, but that means so is Kings Highway. But what comes to mind is sort of like what Miss Sally was just saying, that when I was younger, there were, and even Jay, there were some promises that were broken when I was a child, and I decided, and I know that it wasn't there, it was always good intention, but it still felt away. And when I was young, I decided that was a big boundary for me. That if you make a promise, you keep a promise. It's okay if you can't do a thing, but don't tell me you're going to do something and not do it. But as the decades have gone on, what I would say in response to the question, what emotional impact does it have? I look more at how I notice over time that I break promises. I've made promises with my words, and sometimes, I raised a child for 10 years. I never promised to be there always, but there were some quiet things that were promised. And I've broken some promises to people that I really love, and to myself, more frequently to myself. And I feel like the impact of a broken promise is the one that leaves me feeling less confident in myself. Sometimes I've found myself not believing myself. And it's changed, it has in the past changed the way I've moved, or changed, or maybe there's a little bit more of that depression I'm feeling because I don't feel capable of doing things because I've broken promises more than once to my own self. And so now my focus has been more around, it still matters to me. I don't want you telling me something, and I make that more clear now to people when they promise something. It's okay if you can't. I don't need you to make that promise. And I just kind of don't really hold people to them as much. Just like with like money, if I loan you money, I don't anticipate ever seeing that back, no matter what you tell me. And I sort of have that same sort of, distance with promises. But for myself, and for my emotional well-being and health, I'm trying to keep the promises I make to myself.
Sis, if you didn't bring up something strong, how we make promises to ourselves and break them, and I truly believe that our response to self sets the precedence for how we respond to others in that light. Like, it's real hard for me to be forgiving of someone who breaks their promise to me when I'm super, super hard on myself when I don't do what I say I'm going to do. Or even if I tell someone that I'm going to do something and then I'm not able, personally, I get to feeling super, like, it makes me feel so bad. Like it's gut wrenching for me, and shame enters the space. And I feel the same way, you know, if I say, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym 3 times this week and I only make it 1.5 because I left early because I was tired. I feel bad. And so there is this thing about how we speak to ourselves that is more compassionate and more thoughtful, and perhaps not putting as much weight. One of the 4 agreements is to be impeccable with your word and to speak with integrity. And I forget what the rest of that is. But I've always struggled with that. Like, I desire, but there's something about that that feels um, like there's no give, there's no elasticity in it. And it almost, for me, reinforces, you know, this concept of, if I say a thing, then I absolutely must. And I have watched people work themselves or commit themselves or overcommit themselves or overwork themselves into burnout because, well, I said it, so I have to do it. As opposed to remembering that love yourself enough to create some elasticity, some compassion, and trust that others love you enough to understand if you got some things going on and you can't do it. Communicate. Talking to Adande as well as everybody else. But we don't have to lie in the bed with shame. We don't have to feel ashamed because we cannot. That's that unintentional harm. And I love how you began this with the idea that oftentimes there are good intentions when I said yes. I was well meaning when you got the yes, but life continues to life. And who knows what gets in the way. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Other thoughts? What are some impacts of broken promises in your relationships or in your life? And how have you managed to deal with them? Oh, Stacey, go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry, I
Mhm.
couldn't find it. I still don't know where it is.
You could have just done this.
Oh, okay.
I understand.
Good morning, everybody. When you first asked the question, I was just like, I don't know. I couldn't think of a single time someone had broken a promise to me. And then I thought, I guess there are implied promises. And then you touched on this when you were talking about parents, and you didn't use this language, but you were saying there was an implied promise in parenting and parenthood. So I just kept listening and thinking, and I thought to myself, finally, I'm like, I am pretty suspicious of promises. It's not something that I really get down with. And maybe it's because I'm an overly practical person, and I'm like, how are you going to predict the future? Like, you don't know what's going to come up in your day or somebody else's day. You can intend to do a thing, commit to doing a thing, do the best that you can. So I know I don't make promises. I don't like that language. And I think it sets people up for, I, I think it sets people up for lots of things. But I do believe strongly, and people may say this is semantics, and maybe it is. I do believe strongly in committing to things that are important and then trying my best to follow through on those things, and then giving myself, and I may be less, actually, I don't know which one I'm better at, but trying to give myself grace and give others grace when it's not something that they can follow through on. The communication thing mentioned is pretty key to me. But I think there are probably other things. Like I remember having a conversation with friends back in grad school, and we were talking about marriage, and I was just like, I don't get it. I mean, I get commitment, but I was just like, because I was saying, literally, I said, I don't know that it would be possible for me to promise to feel a certain way about someone. And I'm like, my feelings, they don't stay in the same. I'm like, so I'm like, that to me is a setup for failure, a setup for disappointment, a setup for betrayal, but I don't mean in the cheating kind of way, but betrayal. However, would my intentions be to, regardless of the circumstances, always honor them, me, and our union? Yes. Right. But again, like the term promise to me is, I'm not sure it, maybe at some point my feelings will change about the language. But right now I'm like, not really my deal. Not really my thing. And even if I'm thinking about parenthood, and maybe this is where my suspicion comes from, or my deep mistrust on my paternal side, even there, like in the 50 some odd years I've lived, I'm like, people grow, they change, people really do the best that they can or know how, for the most part. And accepting them where they are. So even if there's an implicit promise there that is failed, then my question is, okay, what is their life supposed to be teaching them? And then whatever feelings I have about it, processing that and coming to terms with it, because none of us is perfect, not a single one. And it doesn't mean that these things don't hurt. They often do. But, just like everything else that we're always talking about, a lot of it is processing it, coming to terms, giving people grace, trying to find understanding, So promises can go and live someplace else, as far as I'm concerned. So that's it.
I like the way you ended that. Promises can go and live someplace else. But my God, did you bring up some amazing points? I wanted to say implied promise, but the word implied just wouldn't pop into my brain at the time. So thank you for picking that up and giving me the verbiage. But this idea of implied promises comes with oftentimes in any relationship that we're in, if it's familial, if it is friendship, if it is romantic, we all come with these preconceived notions and we bring that to the table and it's not spoken about. And that is a setup. It's a setup for failure. It's how people end up on pedestals and then fall from grace. It's how we get our feelings hurt, or how we break our own hearts because I thought that you understood that if you my person, then that means that you're gonna do X, Y, and Z. And they like, well, hold on, because I've been a lot of people's person before and I ain't never done X, Y, and Z, and now I ain't their person no more. We think these things, we think that our friends should always be there and listen. But what if you got a lot going on and it's triggering to your friend and she's not like not being there for you, but what you got going on is making her life a little bit heavier and she just can't handle it right now. What are we saying about this concept of a promise or the implied promise? And I think it's right to be suspicious about, it's not just semantics, it's how we understand, it's how we understand each other, it's how we understand words. But to bring about this idea, like, I promise to love you forever, that's wild. And I don't know, outside of God's source to us and perhaps us to your child, that is a promise that can be made. Maybe it is. Some people might feel differently. If I love someone, if I've ever loved someone, I typically will always love them, but that don't mean I'm gonna like you, and it don't mean I'm gonna mess with you. So you might not feel loved. Did I break my promise? If I love you here, but I don't want nothing to do with you. The way that you're going to perceive this relationship now is one that is not rooted in love. And I might be like, well, it has to be love, because if I kept messing with you, I was probably gonna do some physical harm to your body, because that's how you was acting towards me. I'm sorry, Mama Love. Um, but this idea of that I have to maintain this, but that comes along with this implied or implicit promise. And I think that's really interesting with the scripture that Pastor's going to use, because of this implied, this requiredness from us. And again, I love this idea that promises for feelings versus a promise to be willing to commit or to honor is something different, you know? And I'm gonna just throw my own little 2 cents out here. I think when we promise in marriage to love someone, to love someone from here until whenever, or I'm making a commitment to you as an individual, I think that gets a little shaky, because the commitment has to be to the relationship, and because you're gonna piss me off eventually, and I'm not gonna like you for a little bit, and that's just what it is. But if I'm committed, if I'm committed to honoring the space that we've created, that's something different, and that sometimes allows, so how we discuss this, how we bring it about, what it does, because again, our hearts will get broken when we have expectations that someone cannot, does not, whether they mean to or not, live into them. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Momo, good morning. Our driving question: what are some emotional impacts of broken promises in your relationships or in your life, and how have you dealt with them? Lizzie, I see your hand. Whatever you're eating looks really good.
I will not eat it while I'm talking. Sweet to share my Sunday breakfast with you all. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Adande, this is all touching on any, like, I'm like, oh, this happened to me this week, and to us, like making an agreement and then, or like saying yes to something and then renegotiating that, you know? So anyway, it's just like, that's kind of hilarious. But I will say that there's this, what's coming up for me right now, and it actually in some ways is tied to that experience, but in the bigger, it's like, and then people talking about marriage and vows and commitments, like, which is also something that my, like, I'm starting to discern with my beloved is like, and I've never been someone that's super oriented towards marriage, or like, I haven't been the kind of person that was like, that's what I know I want. And like, that's what I'm trying to go for. And I'm just at this moment in my life and in my relationship and in my soul where like, there's this little, it's like this little peeking, it's like something peeking up inside of me. That's like, that feels like it's my soul asking me to like, is this the way? Is this the way? Is there like is this the path here towards like your wholeness, towards healing, towards like the deepest truth of my life and my love for this person? So it's having me consider like, what in the hell are vows? Like, what is marriage? What is commitment? Like, what does it mean? Like, what is the purpose? Maybe it's like, and not even, it doesn't even have to be about marriage, right? It could be something else, but like, what's the sacred purpose of promises, of like making a promise? And with like total respect to your perspective, Stacey, and to all these perspectives, is like, what's the point of a promise? What even, is that even something that can like be upheld? So anyway, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm sitting with like, and especially as someone who's not prone towards commitment, it's like, what is the sacred purpose of commitment, or something like that? And then also, I'll just say, like, in addition to all that, just something I'm thinking of that feels a little bit more on like the mundane, like living our lives and saying yes or no to things. I notice that I'm more in touch, like when I'm grounded and have an uncluttered mind, I have an easier access to like what I really want and can to say yes to, and what I want and can say no to. And And that's just like, I have easier access to that when I'm grounded and uncluttered in my mind, which I just think makes my life flow smoother and makes me a more reliable person. Like when I'm, and that requires like being rooted in, or like being, yeah, grounded enough. So anyway, those are just some thoughts for me this morning.
I love that question. What is the sacred purpose of this promise? And then definitely connecting that with, do I have a clear view of what I'm capable of so that I'm enforcing my own reliability, someone's ability to depend on me? Now, y'all know I love words, so I had to look up the difference between vow and promise. And this is what it says, which is interesting. A vow is a serious promise or decision that's often made in response to another person or something greater, while a promise can be made at any time. So, promise, vow. Okay, I don't know how I feel about that. We're gonna have to take some time to really look at that. We're gonna have to take some time to look at that, or I'm gonna just let everybody hold that in their spirits for a little bit longer. But I think that question really kind of helps us to discern, like, what is the sacred purpose? What am I committing to? And how, I don't want to say important is it that I live this out, but is the task at hand something that is, I don't know, sacred? Is it sacred? And if it's not sacred, what kind of parameters do we provide in case that is something that can't happen? You know, like if I have to miss your birthday party, because I don't know, I was working 50, 60 hours this week and it's Friday night and I'm super tired and I just don't think that I have, like, even though I said I was gonna come, is that earth shattering? Will you understand? Versus, I don't know, if I tell you I'm gonna be your doula and I just don't show up when you are having your baby, that might be a little, you know? So what is the sacred purpose? I really like that question. Thank you for that, Lizzie. Carolyn, then Momo.
Can you hear me good where I'm at?
Carolyn, you're shaky. Carolyn, we cannot hear you. Nope, we're still not grabbing you. Carolyn, let's pause and come back to you. We'll go to Momo and then we'll try to come back. Okay, Momo, go ahead.
Part of me wants to dance to the like shakiness.
You did have a little, yeah.
Right. Okay, can you repeat the question one more time so I can make sure it lands with my spirit?
What are some emotional impacts of broken promises in your relationships or just in your life, and how have you dealt with them?
There's been so many. I think I'm thinking about self and like lack of promises and love and support to self. So then I don't ask others. And I don't expect others to, in the past, I mean, speaking past tense, because I didn't have a promise or a vow to myself due to not feeling worthy of consistency and safety, I then would not expect that from others. And then I noticed the shift when I did start expecting more out of myself. It was like some folks were confused and taken aback. And I really feel you on the aspect of like loving people from afar and then them not feeling like it's love, but it's just like, once I entered the space of like breaking down relationships regardless of like gender or like platonic versus romantic, I was like, okay, then that means my romantic, my friendships, my family, I'm gonna treat y'all the same to a certain extent. Like I'm going to ask, this is the bare minimum, right? And if you're not hitting that regardless if you're blood or not, I'm going to have to like move myself out the way because harm is going to be caused. And so I've promised myself a least harm aspect, and to notice, like, if it doesn't feel fruitful, playful, safe, I have to leave. I have to go. And people have not responded with that very nicely. And I have to sit with that too, of like, oh, I have to also promise myself that I can't be nice. If nice means I'm going to get punched in the face or emotionally like shattered on, I can't be nice. And so having to move through that too has been really interesting as a recovering people pleaser in like good girl syndrome. And the same for last week, because I was doing that last week at work. Because like a lot of my like coworkers were like having hella anxiety. I would just sit there and be like, so tell me what you need from me. And then they were like, ah, and then they came back and was like, they apologized and they were like, oh, like I was like, I already know you were spiraling. I just couldn't join you in the spiral because I don't have energy to join you in the spiral. And it's okay, like you don't have to apologize for being human or messy. But this is what is happening. And that took a lot of energy to like self-regulate through like the whole week. And then I took care of myself. I went on a like mini staycation at home. Like I went to like another city that I live in, and like I really repaired myself. So yeah.
Momo, I love that the framing around how we feel about ourselves, and I think that also goes back to something that Courtney had said earlier, just regards to how we what we expect and how we hold people accountable for their actions or for their words, but taking us away from this concept of like a promise to just consistency. Like just be consistent with your interactions, and then that reinforcing the safety that I have within this relationship. If we can shift ourselves to that, Bertini in the comments said something amazing that really kind of frames all of this. If we consider promises as a declaration of intent, then there's already an understanding that things may arise to change it. The notion that promises are absolutes is more of a reflection of a culture that processes things in absolutes rather than a reflection of how such declarations can function communally. Same thing, if we're focused on the words and your consistency, and I get to hold you to that standard of consistency because that is fruitful, playful, and safe for me and for this relationship, which means that you don't have to make promises to me. That's not necessary. What your declaration of intent is sufficient. So now I don't have to be, Stacey, what did you say? Deep mistrust. I don't have to be suspicious of it. I don't have to be concerned about how you're going to live this out or live it through. There's already built in grace and mercy. The person should be free from shame to be able to say, hey, I can or I can't. What do I do in the meantime? I'm not asking you to join me in this spiral. This relationship doesn't require that from you. You don't have to go and do these things that are standards of any something that may not be obtained. I'm not asking that of you, and you're not asking me to view what you're saying in that light. And we get to continue in this loving, reciprocal relationship that reaffirms community and, again, love, mercy, and grace. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Momo. Courtney, and then we will shift.
Thank you. So when you mentioned consistency, it brought my brain to a place, a conversation I've been having with friends, a couple very specific friends, especially, but just in that, like, yes, I want to not have to hold people to promises and to be able to exercise grace on a regular basis. And especially for those friends I've known for many years, we are consistent creatures, right? And so I appreciate that a successful promise requires a deeper and more honest self-awareness. So when my friend who always flakes, but and listen, it's not just about how it makes me feel that you didn't show up, but I also bought things in anticipation of your arrival. I got more food, I got more seats, I worked a little bit longer, you know what I mean? And yes, I was excited. That because I know you are pretty consistent and that it's always your best intent. It's always that you intend to show up and you want to be there for me. But I also know about you that you work really hard. And at the end of the week, you're tired and you have to preserve more energy. You're saying no to more things. So since we both know this about you, and this is how I'm trying to move to for myself, what I would appreciate more and what I'm trying to offer more upfront is not a yes, I'll be there, but a thank you for the invitation. I hope I can get there. You know, that if I don't know, or if I know about myself that it might change, to at least offer that flexibility to someone so that they're not relying on my intent, but rather I can show up in what I know is my consistency.
Yes, yes, yes. As you were talking, I wrote, align your actions with your knowledge. My knowledge of you, and you do the same with your knowledge of me. If you know that this is what I'm doing in preparation
Sasuke,
for
no.
you, then align your actions with who you know me to be. And I'm going to align my actions with who I know you to be. And there's no love lost there, so that I can continue to be or act in, behave within my own consistency. Like, I love that. Yeah. Also speaking as a friend who flakes quite often. But my friends know that about me. And whenever I say yes, I remind them, like, you know, we're going to have to see the day before, right? Like, you know, I'm going to check in with you the day before or that morning, because I be tired. I don't know what to say. Is this a nap party? Are we all coming over to lay down and go to sleep? Because if it's not, then we're going to have to check in to make sure that I can be there. But I hold that knowledge, and they hold that knowledge of me. And so we can do that. We can engage without harm coming, or without someone being, you know, whatever. But also, if I find that exceptions have been made, I'm more inclined to make sure that I'm there. I'm more inclined to do the things, because if you've gone out of your way, then I'm going to meet you there. We know this about each other. So align your actions with your knowledge. That is a wonderful point to transition us with. Thank you, Courtney. So without further ado, the doctor, Reverend Elise Salisbury, I hope that we set you up fairly with this conversation. I hope that you enjoyed the discourse, so that you can jump in and bring us a good word, and so we can have another kind of grounding or rounding out conversation at the end. She let me know that she ain't about talking for an hour, so she gonna talk a little bit, and we gonna have a little bit more of this discussion, and see what comes from it. So welcome to our sacred space. So happy to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation. I absolutely have been very present and listening to the guiding question as well as the responses. One of the things that this has made me consider, I'm a criminal justice major. And one thing within the confines of charging someone is to prove intent. And so I'll ask that when it comes to promises, that we consider all the things that have been centered, intent, the character and integrity of the person making the promise, right? Our desire for them to be more than who they have proven themselves to be, the words that have been given to us that have already been consistent or inconsistent, considering who the person is, what they're able to offer, but at the foundational part, their character and integrity. So yes, so much good information has been offered. I'm grateful. Thank you for the invitation to this space. It's such a heartfelt and honest and spirit-filled space, and I'm grateful for being here. Again, not to prolong the time, I'm not a person that talks long. I try to shoot from the hip and keep going. And so please, if you have any questions or comments per anything or questions that you hear, if you would raise your hand, that gives me the ability to see you and to acknowledge any, moment where you may have a question or comment to offer. So I was led in this invitation and in this space to talk about dropping the dime. God don't play about you. And it comes from Genesis 38, chapter 38, verses 8 through 10. I am a holiness born bred child to adult. And so I normally talk specifically from the King Jimmy version, but also is absolutely not the only source or resource that I depend on to accurately attempt to talk about these texts. And so it reads, and Judah said unto Onan, go into thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass when he went unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord. Wherefore he as in the Lord, slew him also. So this text is widely known to limit the story to masturbation and mostly centering marital customs of that time. According to Mosaic law and levirate marriage, it was such that if a man's brother died, he was forced to marry the brother's widow. This was to ensure that the male children were birthed, the brother's name and legacy continue, and the widow would be taken care of. Exogamy, or marrying outside of one's tribe, was unlawful. Endogamy, marrying within the tribe, it ensured that wealth rotated in the family, communities thrived, and women were cared for, but for the purpose of birthing. In this chapter, Judah left Dothan, where he and his brothers had just plotted to make their brother Joseph a victim of human trafficking. Leaving home, Judah took a wife and had 3 sons. He arranged for his eldest, whose name means to strip or to accumulate, to marry Tamar. The text is not clear on what did to anger God, but the text calls him wicked. And wicked in Hebrew means criminal. So this suggests that God killed because lived a criminal life, or a life that was antithetical to the character of God. Note, I've learned throughout the years to consider the text the name that the person is called, in this case, wicked. And that wicked could have, and what wicked could have actually meant. Speculation in mind in the text must have its place when reading a Bible or any ancient text, whereas rules of engagement differ from current culture and any book that does not consider the humanity of every individual involved. So here are my questions that I asked in reading the initial part of this text. Did have someone that he preferred to marry and birth children with? Was the evil that he rejected traditional or the law? Was it of tradition or of the law? Was even attracted to Tamar? Could have had other preferences. It is speculated that he refused to have sex with her. So could have been gay, bi, or have no sexual desire at all? Was it possible that followed all of the directions and went through the motions but was infertile? Why is something that important that God or spirit would take life hidden and left for us to speculate? And for something to be considered evil at that time, someone in authority had to be involved. So who or what actually killed Again, custom of that time was for the brother to take the deceased brother's wife, marry her, and birth sons to ensure that his name and legacy continued. So here is Onan, the middle son, whose name means strength and power. Judah arranged for Onan to marry Tamar, a young potential teen girl, widow, childless, who was separated from all that she knew. Her family, her friends, her land, on her second marriage. And enduring the trauma of her husband dying seemed to be of no concern to the crafters of Mosaic law or levirate marriage, her future husband, or her father-in-law. There were adult, insensitive, and unreasonable expectations of this young Black girl. In order for her to live a life of substance, she had to be attached to the man she was married to and have the ability to birth a male child. If you read on in Numbers, the mother of the daughters of Zelophehad is never mentioned in the Bible, as she only birthed girls. And Zelophehad died fathering no sons. So again, Tamar could even have the ability to birth, but at the time, birthing only girls still made women of no importance and invisibilized. So here we are again to see her being given to Onan, and Onan arranged to be with her for the cause of his brother's legacy. Onan goes in and has sex with her, but upon orgasm, he pulls out intentionally, not desiring to birth a child or children. Doing so would only benefit his dead brother. So Onan here is a bit different. He does not hesitate to marry her when it's time, and when it's time to have sex with her, he is fully operational. He goes through the motion, but does not fulfill his obligation to impregnate her, assuming she's not infertile. It is said that Onan's wrongdoing was that he did not consummate the marriage, but he did. To consummate a marriage means to have sexual intercourse. That was fulfilled. Onan pulled out so that his seed would not be called that of another man. Onan pulled out so that his seed would not create wealth that he would not be credited with. Talking about a promise made. Being the eldest son, had Onan birthed with Tamar, this would have given the deceased brother's son, birthright. I speculate that Onan's reason for not planting a seed in Tamar is greed, because a son born to would make the son next in line for succession and benefactor of all the wealth that and Onan might have incurred. If had no kids, then Onan would receive the blessing of succession and wealth, being the oldest living sons. And in all of that I read, there were other questions too. Did Onan pull out because he was infertile? Did Onan pull out because surely if God honors, or spirit honors, or other honors, or the universe honors free will, did his autonomy matter? Again, did God kill Onan, or did traditional values kill Onan? Did God kill Onan, or did a promise that could never be kept kill Onan? Did Onan and have a right to say who the mother of their children should be? I am a reproductive justice advocate, and reproductive justice, as we apply it, it means that everyone centered in the story's humanity matters. And just because a law suggests a thing does not make law an absolute truth. It does not make the promise an absolute truth. Were the boys wanting the autonomy they've seen their daddy Judah operate in? After all, Abraham and Isaac forbade the marriage of Canaanite women, but Judah did it. Their daddy did it. Why couldn't and Onan have the autonomy to make choices for their lives that they watched their daddy have? Though Tamar also is a Canaanite woman, neither of them asked for her. Did Judah not think that his bloodline and own legacy included behavior that would one day come back to haunt him? I mean, he did attempt to conspire to expose his own brother to human trafficking. What grace was Judah given that his sons were not? Some suggest that because of the bloodline and the need for a Jesus to come through that bloodline, the sons interrupting their bloodline caused them their lives. In all honesty, I have more questions after reading this than I did when I began. Arranged marriages might be good for bloodlines, but not in the best interest of the individuals having to abide by such traditional and societal standards. Bloodlines created caste systems. Demand for pure bloodlines is why white nationalism exists, and the ideology of white supremacy. Demand for pure bloodlines created the likes of an Adolf Hitler. Demand for pure bloodlines allows for a prime minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to nearly annihilate Palestinians for the sake of tribe, community, caste systems, and land. The demand for pure bloodlines are why we who are aware and in the fight for justice have postured ourselves in the fight against Project 2025. Isn't it intriguing that a Palestinian Jew named Jesus, who is deemed the reason for levirate marriage and arranged marriages in the Davidic bloodline, to never be centered in any of these demands for ethnic cleansing, and that justice for all and autonomy was the reason he was to be sent, die, and to be resurrected? So I'll stop here and ask, anyone have thoughts about what has been shared so far? Have you considered that arranged marriages just might be considered another form of human trafficking? Though considered right in certain cultures, do you believe that it's the same thing? As it relates to the context of American culture, we're all being trafficked in some way, in my opinion. Whether it's working a job during a time of anticipatory grief, but we must work and we don't want to, but we have to. Where we have to show up for our kids in spite of the absence of the responsibility that we have taught them. We are forced to be present and participate as if nothing else is affecting us. What are your thoughts about being human trafficked by life and culture? What do you do with the promises made by systems, people, government, institutions, parents, lovers, friends, even community, but you realize that you are not safe? How do you feel that Tamar, a woman without power, moved in this space as a victim of cultural norms and levirate marriage? I'll stop there for any responses that you want to offer.
I'm gonna jump in because I have so many. First off, King Jimmy is hilarious. Just got to start there. King Jimmy is great. This idea that a woman, because we're talking about kind of the autonomy of the gentleman, but you know, this idea that of who is being trafficked, who is being bounced around, and the autonomy that she has to say yes or no versus getting caught up in a system. And we often see that now, which brought me to when you mentioned like the law, and I was just thinking like law, promises. We talked earlier about the promise to protect this absolute truth, but we don't feel that here. So again, the people that are being bounced around, there is this implicit, this implied promise to protect us that is not happening. And yet we don't even have the autonomy to speak back or to push back or whatever. And I was hoping you were going to get to Project 2025 because that's where my mind was going, because I'm looking at how these things are being set up and these pathways being continued under this guise of a promise to protect, but it protects some, the best interest, the lineage, this non-diluted space that people want that isn't really non-diluted, because let's, you know, be for real. So you just get to be the ones that get to bounce around and do whatever it is you want. Again, it's like being with a dude who's like, yo, I'm a cheat, but I need you to be faithful. You know, and if you do that, I'm gonna protect you, but are you really protecting me because you're exposing me to STDs? You got somebody else pregnant, which means your money ain't coming to the house. My heart is hurting, so this space isn't safe. All of these things are coming out in this story. I hadn't thought about her before, but definitely Onan. But it didn't occur to me that one, maybe he was being selfish, or two, which wasn't brought up, but maybe he was like, yo, this system is BS and I'm not feeding it. Like, okay, maybe I like Tamar. She kind of slick. I'm gonna go ahead and rock with her, but I ain't trying to like, you know, create nothing that's gonna continue this because I don't want to. Maybe they had a conversation and they were in cahoots. Maybe she said, I don't want no kids because I want to break the system too. We don't know. So the strength and power in conversation and these promises that are forced upon us, that's what I feel like is being called out. Like, where are we forced to act in a particular kind of way? That's that woman be in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant all the time. Like, that's not a promise I've ever committed to somebody. Like, that's wild. Or even teachers in the school system. Like, nowadays, you're just exposed to these kids who sometimes are wilding out. Yo, I didn't promise I wasn't gonna swing back. That's your morality clause. I ain't say I wasn't going to. I don't care how old this child is. If they think they can throw hands with me, we about to tussle, is what I'm saying. That's, you put that in my contract. I didn't write that for myself. I didn't say I promised to do this. So what are we calling out in these spaces, and how do we get to, within our own autonomy, create sacred safe spaces in all of how we live? Is all the things that I was hearing. I got more notes, but I'm gonna stop there because my God.
That is so good. And just to piggyback off of what you stated, so the benefit, the other thing also is to look at who benefits from the cultural laws, right? So even this morning, I was reading about Project 2025 a little more in depth. It's like 900 plus pages. They're assuming that we won't take the time to read it, but here are just a few things. The end of no-fault divorce. Who benefits from that? Complete bans on abortion without exceptions. They're already kind of, moving across the country to make that a thing. It doesn't matter if it's incest or any other traumatic occurrence. The end of abortion without exceptions. The ban on contraceptives. Additional tax breaks for corporations and the 1%. Elimination of unions and worker protections. What does that mean? Who benefits from these things that might become a part of our culture as soon as January 1? A raise in prescription drug prices, use of public taxpayer money for private religious schools. What are they teaching? Who is benefiting from the teaching? So those are just a few things that are listed there. Ending climate protections, right? Again, Project 2025 and who benefits, as well as what in their attempt is becoming or might become a cultural norm that might further marginalize those who are already marginalized. So I see your hand, Reverend Regina.
Thank y'all so much for this. Wait a minute. This is a great question for this morning. And the reality of who benefits is all the questions, really. Because we sometimes think that our laws should go across the land, but it shouldn't. And who does it benefit when it does? It benefits the same people that are in power now. So we really don't have autonomy over nothing. I think about that when they started women to voting. They didn't want to do it. They did it because they wanted more votes. So that's how women got in there. We didn't do it because we thought the woman has a good point. No, you did all this stuff because you wanted to remain in power, okay, forever. So this is a great question for this morning to be looking at. How does autonomy really work, and whose favor does it work in? So I love the question, and I love this thing because I was just thinking about that. Who all benefits from anything? I've been married for 31 years, but I don't believe in, I'm the only person for you. I think you may see somebody else, and that's okay because that's life. I'm not the same person I was at 28 when I met you. So I just don't, feel the same way. And a lot of people don't know that, I have these thoughts, but it's like, I'm not really bound by a lot of these rules we claim to live up under. But, going to theology, going to seminary or whatever for school really helps to open you up to believing more things are possible, okay? So I do appreciate you and this whole thing. Because I was sitting there listening to your story and I was like, all that stuff is true, right? She might not have wanted to have no baby, and that would have benefited his brother, not him. Okay. So, it was so much going on. So I really appreciate what's going on today.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It absolutely is a thing. As you said, did she even want to birth, right? It may be a cultural norm. Even some of those who may not have children or may not desire them or may desire them and just haven't had a moment where they've had a chance to stop, right? To even consider relationship or birthing without a partner. There's a lot of different situations that people find themselves in, but there is an expectation of law and culture. There is an expectation of this country that we're seeing that is on the rise of white cultural norms, right? That says that you have to have a mommy and a daddy. Like when we're talking about considering a white supremacist theology perspective, right? There should be a mom, there should be a dad, but what if I don't even like men? And what if I just want to raise my child? I know an individual who has chosen to raise, at this point, 2 children alone and is doing a great job. Right. So what about this system that we are that our ancestors, be clear, were human trafficked to this country, and now we are hijacked to eating foods that may not even be healthy for our bodies in this part of the world that causes these health issues. You see what I'm saying? Human trafficking, it is not only in silo to those who are snatched and put in a van. It is those whose ancestors have been snatched from a country and brought into and separated into other parts of the world to even take in food that is not healthy for their bodies, to have habits that are not healthy. I know a lot of people right now who have moved to Mexico and are living what they call a much better life for them, because there's not the hustle and bustle of American life that is the expectation of us, especially as it relates to Black women and individuals across the spectrum. And so, yes, I think I'm grateful to hear that this conversation is on point with what is on our hearts and our minds and experiences. And like I said, not to prolong the time, I want to move on. I don't see any other hands for comments. But I want to move on about.
Hold on, Pastor. Sally's hand is up.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No problem. Project 2025 also talks about the elimination of departments, education, financial, FDA. I mean, so it's just not that, but I think it's based in the fear that they will no longer be the majority. And so to hold on to that power, they've got to do something to make sure that when others get into power, whom they've oppressed and treated horribly, that the fear is that they'll be treated the same way. Now that's your ill and yet your ilk, that has nothing to do with me. So therefore, I'm scared to death that hopefully that orange person doesn't get in. But to hear that, and as an educator, to hear that the whole department, which needs to be rewritten anyway, but not the way they're trying to rewrite it. They want to go back to tell me what I can and cannot teach in my classroom, which I've never listened to anyway, but that's besides the point. But yeah, it's interesting that you came up with a 900-page manifesto to hold on to the power that you took in the first place and have wielded over the world. And in taking our bodies out of Africa, I tell my kids that everywhere there is, we are, because of what they did to us. So we stand in that truth within the diaspora, which is everywhere. Because everywhere you go, you're going to see us. We're going to be there. Absolutely. All right, I'm done.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. And that is a great segue. I see the other hand, but just to piggyback off of what you stated, we are everywhere in spite of being trafficked, in spite of our ancestors being trafficked, in spite of our intentions and things that we desire to do being trafficked by promises unkept in the spaces that we all inhabit, as well as in this country. And so I want to go to the other hand. Excuse me if I mispronounce your name. Is it Urania?
It's Urania, Reverend, but that's
almost.
Good morning and welcome, welcome. This conversation has been so rich, so deeply rich that my mind is just all over the place. But when I was thinking, we were talking about Reverend Regina brought up the rights for women to vote. So, okay, it benefited the white citizenry of this country because they had their wives in the voting booths to vote their choices. They couldn't even yield and their own choices. They had to vote the way the man said. So then here we are, 2020. When was the Dodd Act enforced, the repeal of Roe versus Wade? And so now, 22, thank you, Reverend. So now here we are with that culture, those powers to be afraid of not being the majority. So what do? We're going to stop abortion because privately I have no right. You know, if my wife if she's pregnant and I don't know, and she can go and have an abortion, we're going to stop that. So now it's illegal. It's illegal. We want to control everything. And I love this conversation. Like I said, there's so much swirling in my mind, but we must stop to think about who does this benefit and how. I was just having a discussion the other day about the 4th of July traditional meal in our Black culture and how unhealthy that meal, although, I mean, I love it. You know, give me a good rib tip, spaghetti and potato salad, but those are not the dietary habits or customs that we had before we landed, or Plymouth Rock landed on us. So you have given me so much to think about. And I've never heard the story of Tamar and all that. I never looked at it from that perspective. That's powerful. Maybe she didn't want children. Yeah. And we know that sometimes people are motivated by their own selfish needs and greed and not wanting to share the wealth with anyone else. That we see that throughout the land. So thank you so much, Reverend. I'm glad to have you this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thanks for all the offerings thus far that's been given. It's really a lot to think about. It also speaks to the weight of the things that we all have experienced as a collective, as well as in our individual lives. Again, being hijacked to what people desire to be cultural norms. I'll tell you all this. I was in Walgreens the other day, and I was sitting next to a lady. She says, you know, she starts talking and she says, wow, being 86 is a wonderful life. And I looked at her and I said, wow, you're 86. That's amazing. I was like, you look great. I'm going to pray for the grace that you have as a person that's 86, that's still driving themselves around. And so as we sat there, and I was in agreement with how great she looked in a moment, she looked at the lady in line and she says, now, why would she have purple hair? And I looked at the lady standing in line and I said, well, I think it's great. You don't like it? She was like, no, I don't like it. I said, well, I think it looks good on her. I said, people have the ability to choose, And I think it looks good. I've had my hair. Now I just darken mine, but I said I've had my hair different colors. And so, yeah, that's autonomy, that's independence. And she didn't say anything else to me for the remainder of the time that we were there. But again, it speaks to the depth of how we as a community, right, have been forced to assimilate, right, to standards that are not what we potentially may have chosen for ourselves. Even this lady, right, who is 86 years old, who is surviving and seems to be thriving. She has been trained. She has become a part of what is the norm for her time and for cultural. Absolutely, the boldness to sit there and say it in a way that the person could hear it, but I was more adamant, right, about saying, well, I like the color, I've had mine. So I'm not going to attempt to make you feel comfortable in this space that has become a norm for you, right? Because culture shifts, time changes, rules change, and it's also up to us to ensure that not only the future becomes better, but that our lives, that we advocate for ourselves to make our lives better. So I want to also move to part 2 and what I mean when I say dropping the dime in the story, dropping the dime, right? God still doesn't play about you. God don't play about you. So let me drop the real and tell you what dropping the dime on what this story is actually about. This story is a sad truth about what leverage marriage is, but its impact on the women and individuals who are victims of culture. This story is about systems and how they adversely but intentionally impact vulnerable women and individuals' social lives, economic statuses, autonomy, wombs, their choices, and self-determination. This story is about the neglect of free will and to posture cultural rights as truths, but the power of a woman who subverts the intentional harm that happened to her. What has not been considered many times in this text is the dropping of the dime. When I was growing up, a dime was a young woman who was considered beautiful and worth investing in. She was considered a woman to be taken seriously, a 5-star chick, if you will. A dime's humanity was to be considered. And though called a dime, she definitely was worth far more than 10 cents. She wasn't perfect, but she and her wisdom was one to build with, whether it be a home, a business, a family, or all of them. If you continue through the remainder of chapter 38, you will read that Tamar takes back her power. Judah had not considered who Tamar was. How could he postulate when he took a woman who he was never supposed to marry, not according to the law? Now that he has 2 dead sons and he has arranged for her to marry and 1 son left that he fears for his young son's life, he now sees her as a threat instead of a blessing. Can we talk about current culture? Women now being seen as a threat instead of the blessing. He sends her back home and asks as if he's willing to wait for his youngest son to come of age and give him to her. He's afraid that Tamar killed his sons instead of their own decisions or his lack of influence in their lives. He never considers his influence, lack of self-control, greed, decision-making, or his inability to be a good example to his sons as cause of their premature death. Judah never considers the possibility of maltreatment or abuse Tamar might have encountered being forced into a system that required her body, mind, and her soul, and things that she never had choice nor consented to. Tamar is inserted into this text without introduction, just a woman taken and given, a young woman bought and sold. This story is not solely about Er's death. Er's name means strip. No person can do anything with anyone who starts outstripping them of their autonomy and their ability to be self-determining from the beginning. Tamar being given to stripped her of her ability of autonomy before she could even get her young Black life started. Onan spilling his seed is reflective of refusing to give power and strength to Tamar that could have been redemptive and recompense for the losses she had already taken. We're still talking about promises. So Judah and both of his sons, and Onan, literally dropped the dime. Well, Judah almost, because what Judah did not consider is that Tamar is clever. She's a young woman who's endured a life of many ills, pains, untold stories, and traumas. Another thing not considered is that God, Spirit, Mother, Other, the universe, and any other name that she is known by honors every Tamar because women and those who operate in and outside of genders are the divine. So we eat, sleep, live, breathe, and move in the divine. As the story goes on, the promises made to Tamar by culture, systems, and the men and others she encountered, the redemption that Tamar was not offered by someone who could have offered even something as simple as a seed offering. She took her power back with vengeance and stripped her father-in-law of what was rightfully hers. She heard that Judah was on his way to see the son that she was promised to marry, and the trip didn't include her. Tamar put herself on the road of Timnath, where she knew Judah would travel, and dressed herself as a sex worker. What you must understand is that the word Timnath means to allot or to divide. Tamar put herself on the path that demanded that Judah allot and divide to her what was rightfully hers. She dressed herself as a sex worker, and he had sex with her. And when someone gossiped to Judah that she was pregnant, he was ready to kill her. And then she pulled the evidence that she'd kept from the night that she had sex with him, his signet, his bracelet, and staff, as proof that the twin babies were his. Judah was moving out of repetition of tradition. Tamar was moving out of the divine, in the divine, and with the hands of the divine covering her life the entire time. You see, Tamar's name means palm tree. Here's the thing about palm trees. Palm trees can endure tropical climates or temperatures in desert places. Palm trees can be short shrubs, or they can grow up to 200 feet tall if its produce are edible and it's easy to care for. Palm trees have evergreen leaves, which means it doesn't matter about the conditions. Palm trees or the Tamars of the world are still gonna shine. Tamar had strength that she didn't know she had. Tamar had wisdom she didn't know she had. But Tamar recovered everything by ensuring that she pursued what we in the reproductive justice community call abundant life. Yes, there are things that have happened to us. Yes, there are promises that have been made that we assume that would be determinants of the outcomes of our lives. The divorce or the breakup was painful, but you are the divine, and God and the universe is fighting in you and for you. There is nothing that has been taken from you that you cannot recover. No job loss, no lie told to you, nobody who's attempted to push you to the back of the line. Your gifts were ignored, but it's your power that was intimidating. They couldn't keep up with the promise because their humanity couldn't match the divine authority that exists within you. God in you does not play about you. We are, I am, they are, you are the divine. And God and the universe has already gone to war for you. And just like Tamar, you can recover your strength and power despite the cultural norm, seemingly, or despite the lie. I chose Megan's song because we're living through a moment of anxieties and broken promises, fears, uncertainties, and tears. And though we may not have all the answers and our hearts are yet broken, we were told if we go to college and stay on the right path and do the right things, yes, blessings and bounty would be ours. And we were promised an equal America. We were sold a dream that may never come to fruition. We were denied, rejected, and misunderstood. But this is not the time to quit. This is the time to put the divine, the God in us, to battle. This is a time to take the energy of our present ancestors and angels who are fighting for us to flight. God, being the divine, exists within us, and you are that spiritual authority. You have the spiritual authority to declare and decree in this moment what shall be. And if you'll allow me in my closing to prophesy you to the spirit being in you, to the God in you, to awake the giant in you, regardless of all the things that were mentioned and have been mentioned since this call started. Yes, feel what you feel and heal as you heal. And healing is yours. Abundance is yours. Strength is yours. Prosperity is yours. Freedom is yours. Liberation is yours. Spirit and truth is yours, because the God in you does not play about you. God bless you. Spirit bless you. The universe bless you. And all things are abundantly yours.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Amen and absolutely.
Amen.
My God, we began with the impact of broken promises and reaffirmed our rights to assess the sacredness of commitments that we make. And then we got to explore potential harm done to us by fulfilling promises that don't honor the whole of humanity. Before we were then reminded to pay attention to the divinity, the God in us, and how much the God in us does not play about us. That alignment is the call forward. Ending with the reminder that we are, in fact, evergreen, that our energy is, in fact, evergreen, that the divinity in us is calling us not just to make blanket statements, but to really investigate the commitments being made about us, over us, and how we get to transmute those by way of activating not just ours, but this community as we come together. My God, and absolutely. Thank you, Pastor Elise. Momo, come through. I love that you like the tea, because it's a juicy story.
And why? It's been a darn enough time for the line took me away. This is amazing, because I was feeling like a little bit of like hopelessness for a minute. I was like, oh my God, Jesus. And yeah, I want to also lift up like survival sex work, because the first question you asked around like the kidnapping and the taking away, I believe that it's also prominent in our culture for folks who have to stay with partnerships or stay married, because there's no way to access anything, or there's a belief or a lie that there's no way to have an easier life. And so comes survival sex work that I don't feel like we talk about in marriages. And in partnerships, especially like trying to like cohabilitate with people. And that's been like a conversation that people have been having with me lately, like friends around just like, like rent is so expensive. And so that's why, I have to live with a partner. But I'm like, you have to? Like, do you want to? But then also the divineness of sex and sexuality and the seductory and the soulness of it. And I'm holding both of those. Thank you.
That's such an amazing point. Yes, folks who are trafficked within the confines of marriage. Again, I come from a very traditional church who taught us our bodies are not our own. And so, yes, it is a mousetrap to get into those traditional theological beliefs and to feel handcuffed to a person who can just turn over in the middle of the night, whether you feel like it or not, and have their way with your body. So yes, to what you named. Thank you for centering that. Yes, I love that point. Thank you so much.
And just to piggyback on that, they say that it takes, I'm going to say individuals, but about 7 times on average to leave a relationship where intimate partner violence is present. And sometimes the return is because I don't have another way to take care of myself, or I don't have another way to take care of my kids, or I don't have another way to take care of my needs. And so I must endure until there's a plan. And I think as we tie these things together, what happens when we have to break a promise made? Because our safety has been compromised. You know, we saw Tamar get smart and shifty, and she probably, I'm saying get smart. No, she just showed it to us when it was necessary, when she was like, oh, okay, cool. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, but I'm not having this no more. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up, make a fool out of you, and make sure that my lineage is together and my needs are taken care of. I'm gonna do all of that. And oftentimes people find themselves in those same situations. And I'm not just talking about in relationships. What happens when you in that job and you got that supervisor who you know keep taking credit for all the work that you keep doing, but it ain't the right time to leave because you got bills to pay, right? So you start picking up extra contracts, or you start doing consulting work on the side, right? And right when you're ready to dip, you're gonna throw them the deuces, maybe give it 2 weeks, or maybe be like, nah, effective immediately because somebody's paying me buku to be flown out someplace. So I'm gonna be in the tropics. I'm gonna present at this conference, and my needs are met. We get to do the things. It doesn't just show up in one way. In our space, these promises that are forced over us or into us, they come out in multiple ways, and how we get to respond. Because man, that goes so back, Pastor Elise, to the God and you don't play about you. If we can remember that, if we can come back to the divineness inside of us, knowing that that's at the root, you ain't got to play about you. You don't have to break promises to yourself. With grace and mercy, you get to show up. Yeah.
Absolutely. And considering that those who are on this call, we have started over so many times in our lives, right? Because that's also the thing that keeps us confined to relationship, lies, spaces, harm that's been imposed on us. Like, I don't want to start over again. I've invested so much. But one of the things that I've learned in my life is that everything that I've ever gone through has prepared me for where I am right now. The experience that I'm having, or experiences I'm having right now, we're having right now, they're preparing us for the next. So even if you have to separate because your spirit refuses to accept any more harm from the space or the lie that you're currently in, you are very much so equipped and empowered and full of power and the divine to deal with and handle the next.
The floor is still open for thoughts and reflections.
I just wanted to say, I know, just a minute. Okay. This has really been great though, because you don't think about agency that much. You know, I was in Alabama when the decision of Roe versus Wade was overturned. And you know, that's the South, and they in this sick place. Okay, that's why they lost the Civil War. But they just do stuff. So everybody was like cheering, and all the TVs in the hospital was tuned to this madness. Okay, all these women talking about how glad they were, and I was suddenly thinking, no, you just gave up the agency of yourself. Okay, it's not a great thing, but you know, it's just a different place that what you are, it does matter. You know, I was born in Chicago, so up there we had something different, but this whole thing about having agency of yourself, people don't think about it, but it makes such a difference just to be able to live, you know, your life. So yeah, I I like all of this conversation, and I am a critic of the Bible, because why did they have human trafficking as well as teen marriages? Think about, these girls were really young and they were celebrating this. So now I no longer use Bible verses because I really don't feel that way, you know? we think about just like they did this movie with Elvis now, but he was a pedophile. He went for a young girl, and then he married Jerry Lee Lewis, his 13-year-old cousin. What is that stuff? People don't understand that it's a lot of wrong that we do in this society that's so messed up, and it just keeps happening. So yeah, I'm kind of on the fence, but I love the conversation today.
Yeah, I love that. I was considering exactly what you named when I thought about the text that would be used, but the name Onan was in my spirit so heavy, I went ahead and used this text. And I do absolutely agree with everything you just named. I'll also state that one of the reasons that I use the Bible, sometimes in centering certain topics or conversations, is because I'm using the master's tool to dismantle the master's house, right? So I know it's been said before that that is impossible to do, but even in the context of conversations that we've had today, we have been using the master's tool to dismantle the master's house. And not so much even master as it relates to God, because God has not co-signed to any of these things that patriarchy and misogyny, and anti folks who are anti-LGBT and anti anybody or anything, right? So God has nothing to do with those things. But I also, again, use these texts to have the conversations, as well as, in my experience, conversations that men who led those churches have never had with us, right? And so there's another voice that men in the churches that I have grown up in, they have never visibilized the silent victim or the voice of the woman, right? And being a woman, identified as woman, I am able to liberate these women, liberate a Tamar, liberate a Ruth and Naomi. I'm able to liberate them, liberate the sex workers in the stories, right? Because, these are things that have been demonized over time, but these are also the women and individuals of the lineage that people who believe in a Jesus, he had to come through them, right? So how do you get something that claims to be so pure out of women whose, I'll say, reputations have been scarred and marred by men who's been able to lift only their perspectives of their stories, right? In my opinion, for me, as the charge that I believe that I have is the charge to go back and humanize the very women that Bible, in the iteration of the writers who were living in the current context or culture at that time for certain reasons and for what they knew and were taught. And even the folks, the men that were in the Council of Nicaea, right? They postured these stories to get us to a Project 2025. But it is my duty. It is with honor that I center a Tamar that says, the hell you will, because the hell I ain't. Right. So yes, I absolutely honor what you centered, and just wanted to note that, to anyone that may have felt that knee-jerk response to the Bible being used, I do absolutely apologize for that. And it is my hope also that you experience something different in what was shared.
Go ahead, Stacey.
Okay, so thank you. I'm glad that physical hand raising works. I had two thoughts that came through, and only one of them that I can remember. And it tied back through this story that the Dr. Reverend took us through to our earlier conversation about promises and my distrust, mistrust, suspicion of them. But it reminded me of something, and that is that a promise can be made to someone else. It may not be intended for you, in the same way that promises made about this country were definitely not intended. Like those promises were really intended for very few land-owning, wealthy white men, and white as it was narrowly defined then. But those were promises that many of the rest of us have been like, hey, I know you didn't mean me, but I'm going to take you at your word. Right? So a promise can be very, very, very helpful in terms of serving as a tool to dismantle the master's house. So I'm like, when it comes to promises like that, I am all for it all day long, all week, all year, all forever. Because I'm like, okay, that's something that I can use to fight. That is something that I can use to not just protect myself, but protect all of those who are othered in some, from the most minor ways to the most detrimental ways. So thank you for I know you said the names, but I've not seen them, so I can't. I know Judah and some, like those people. Thank you for that story. Because it ties back to the promise conversation in a way that was a really good reminder for me. That was it.
Mama Love, go for it.
You know, thank you, Stacey. I love that these promises we know were not when the framers of the Constitution wrote the Constitution.
It did not mean us.
Right. And so here we are with the power, the divine power, to have the agency to fight and go for what we know belongs to us, those inalienable rights. And yet, as we keep striving, as we keep moving forward, the more we push back, the more they push back. And so then we have Make America Great Again. We have the Dodd Act. We have all this legislation to limit voting rights, even the option, freedom of speech, or even the book bans throughout the country. And now this, I guess, is part of Project 2025. I haven't really looked at that. I'm going to have to research that today. But government, federal money going into private parochial schools for education. You're going to take money away from public education and give it to those entities that already are well endowed, calling it freedom of choice, so whatever that is. And so I love this. And thank you, Reverend. We do have to use the master's tools to dismantle his own house, just like Tamar did. And I'm going back to read that story. I love the book of Genesis and the myths in there and the lessons learned. But I must laugh at myself because when I read Dropping a Dime, now I'm 75, okay? My generation, dropping a dime was making a phone call, okay? Now I knew about someone being a 10, someone being a dime, but never in the context of Tamar being a dime, a beauty, and oh yeah, brilliantly reframed and retold. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm like that 85-year-old woman. That's why I'm in this group. I keep growing and keep expanding. These young girls keep me, y'all expand my consciousness so much. I love you all. And now, Reverend, we want to invite you more and more into our space. So whenever you have the time, know that you are more than welcome. Thank you.
Mama Love, you always make me giggle. Stacey, come through.
I have You mentioned, sorry, I'm going off topic. You mentioned at the beginning that the Reverend Doctor holds Bible study courses. And I've been kicked out of several Bible study groups because I'm not a religious person. My undergraduate degree was actually in philosophy. I'm a studier of religions and systems that communities of people use to sort of make sense of life and living. So I love studying the Bible and other texts. And feel free if we can talk offline, but I'm just curious about how open your group might be to someone like me who's interested in studying the text, but not as a believer, but as a thinker. So if we could talk at some point about that. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but you don't have to respond to me right now or in this space.
It's fine. It's fine. One of the things that I'm grateful of is my experience. And to the point, yes. And if it's appropriate, if I can share an email address or something, Adande, if that's appropriate for this space. And yes, you absolutely would be welcome. It is this format of just conversation, and we, whether folks agree or disagree, we have a good time talking about all the things. It is the same energy as this space. So yes, please, anytime.
Very good. Thank you.
Pastor, please feel free to drop your email or contact information for others who wish to follow up with you and such.
You're gonna do that, excuse me, Adande, you're gonna do that for our Spirit Rising family.
Oh, sure. I can put it into an email. Yes. And I absolutely think that I will when we hop off, because these two links, the big one, the playbook that Pastor Elise put in, and then the 2025 Democratic Task Force one that Sweet Tea shared with us, I will toss that into an email and share out afterwards, because these are some amazing links. So, okay. And there's another one. I got it. Sweet Tea, thank you. You are always with plethora resources.
I want to hear the Jesus question.
There's a Jesus question.
Momo said,
okay, I see it, Momo. Go for it.
A Jesus question.
Okay.
I want to hear the Jesus question.
I'm stuck on the details. So when homie was like having a fun time with this fantasy sex worker, like, did he not pull out? Like, it was just like, it's okay?
He didn't pull out because she ended up having twins by him. He tried to deny it, and yeah, he couldn't deny it because she put herself on this path that she was told he would be on. And what she did the night that she had sex with him, or they had sex, he offered her I think an ass or something to as payment, but he would have to get it back to her. So she was like, so what you got that I can keep to make sure that this promise happens, right? So she kept his signet, his bracelet, and this other item that was specific to him, that was undeniable that it was his. He didn't know who she was because she had covered her face, as most what they call harlots or sex workers at the time did. So when he tried to come for her, when someone gossiped to him that she was pregnant, he sent for her to kill her. But when she showed up, she was like, these twins belong to you. And he was like, oh, wait, how? And she said, your bracelets, that was me that night. I'm the one you spent the night with. So yeah, no pulling out for daddy, literally.
Thank you.
Who's saying it wasn't me? She needs like the revised version of that song. It was me.
The way I love how we go in all the right directions in this group. Now, this is like, what, week like 3 in a row that y'all got me pressed up against 1 o'clock, and I try not to keep you till 1. Are there any final thoughts before I transition back and we have our final song, and then Pastor Elise will pray us out. Go ahead, Sweet Tea.
Yeah, thank you for this topic. I just wanted to add regarding everything. I just put a last link in, and I'm trying to get this out too, because people's hearts are very heavy right now. And as we get closer to the election, it's just going to get more intensified. And, you know, I am having people who are progressives, who are Democrats, that are exploding on me when I talk to them about Project 2025, because they're just like, I don't want to read this. You know, they're tired. People are tensed up. So it's like people are feeling this. I'm feeling this. And so the last link I put in to the chat, it's a really good read. And Maria Popova is just a fantastic writer, and she threads all of the philosophers together and authors together with her column every week. And she came out with this column, and Rebecca Solnit is just amazing thinker. And after reading this article, I had hope again, and it really brings you up. And I want to put that in because we need to have hope in these dark times. And Rebecca wrote her book in 2016 regarding hope in the dark times. And Maria just pulled this back out. And one of the things in this article that Maria talks about and Rebecca is to remember about the victories we've had. Like, we lose sight of a lot of this stuff because of the 24/7 news cycle. And the 24/7 news cycle and social media is creating a lot of chaos in our mind and despair. I mean, it's creating that. And this blog that she does, and this one in particular, I read, and I'm going to keep by my side. And I just wanted to put out hope and get energized and motivated and give this to, you know, everybody in terms of we're feeling it. And this changes that narrative about where we've come a long way and we still need to march on.
Thank you so much for that, Sweet Tea. I have pulled up all 3, so I am excited to, I think I'm going to start with the last one. Thank you for that framing before I look at the other ones. So thank you for sharing that and reminding us that hope needs to be in the forefront of our minds, but so does the work. Absolutely. If there are no other thoughts, Jezreel, if you will play our last song, and then Pastor Elise, if you will pray us out, and then I'll just kind of wrap us up with some couple announcements.
It's really real, a little too much for me. Wanna thank you for the life you give me, the steps I take, really is amazing to me. Always there for me. God, it really don't play about me. Don't play about me. God really don't play about me. God really don't play about me. No, he really don't play about me. underestimated me. I'll sit back, I'm gonna watch them all. One by one they'll fall, and nobody answered their call. God, they really don't play about me. Don't play about me. God really don't play about me. God really don't play about me. No, he really don't play about me. Really don't play about me. God really don't play about me. No, he really don't play about me. God, he really don't play about me. Don't play about me. God really don't play about me. God really don't play about me. No, he really don't play about me. Really don't play about me. God really don't play about me. No, he really don't play about me.
If you will, you may close your eyes or bow your head if you'd like. Dear Mother, Father, Spirit, Universe, Other, by whatever name we call you. We thank you for this moment. Thank you for this fellowship. Thank you for those who were in attendance. Thank you for every ear, every heart, every person that is present this morning, this afternoon. I pray first for grace. I pray for mercy. I pray for strength. I pray for endurance. I pray for hope. I pray that each person under the sound of my voice would know that you are God who resides within, that the strength and the things that we pray for externally are called to us internally and exist in us internally. I pray for abundance. I pray for happiness. I pray for all things that are good and perfect and gifts from you. I pray that you would bless us as we go this week. I pray that you would cover us. I pray that you would protect us. I pray for anything, even any system that is up against us, that you have given us the authority to come up against and to have the victory. I pray for finances, financial blessings. I pray for spiritual coverings of their households. I pray for all things good and abundant for everyone on this call. And we thank you and we pray that next week, oh God, as you bring us back to this place, we pray that you would bring us with a testimony of abundance, a testimony of joy, a testimony of hope, a testimony of peace in our hearts, minds, and soul. And we thank you and we give you praise. These things we ask in your holy name. Ashe and amen.
Ashe and amen.
Ashe, Ashe. Pastor Elise, thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to reiterate Mama Love's invitation to join us whenever you'd like, whether called upon or not. Please don't forget to, or at least share with me whatever contact information I can share out so that those who are wishing to pop up and poke around on your social medias and such can do so. This has been an amazing provocative discussion. I appreciate you bringing kind of awareness of just the state of the world and with your message. This is, or Spirit Rising actually began as a rooted in social justice or spiritual social justice organization. So a way to combine how we see ourselves in community and in the world with the social justice needs of our community. So thank you for bringing that without even being provoked. I told you, there's always alignment here. I don't know what happens in this group, but there always is. To the group, please pay attention to the emails. Don't forget to save the date on your calendar for August 10th through 11th, which will be our Spirit Rising retreat. So there will be no virtual Spirit Rising on the 11th. We will be at Slate Creek Sanctuary out with Carolyn. So we'll have a good time. We had a great time last year. So I hope that many, many more will come out. And if you will, it is 1:12 on the dot. Come off of mute and greet the room and say your hays and goodbyes.
Shay.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Blessings, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Reverend.
Bye. It is beautiful outside, at least in St. Louis. It is hot though. Get outside, get some fresh air, eat something wonderful for lunch. Otherwise,